Sailors, today we're going to talk about side characters and why they matter to your story.
So, as we've been doing, we're going to tie it all back to The Lion King. And we're going to answer some questions. Why are side characters important? And what purpose do they serve? And if you remember, The Lion King has a large amount of side characters. We've got Nala and Rafiki and Timon and Pumbaa, and we've got our lovely hyenas.
And all these side characters, they serve a bunch of different purposes to the story. So what we want to keep in mind is thinking about why do side characters exist in a story and how do they move the conflict forward for your main character, your protagonist.
So let's look a little bit deeper at the side characters in The Lion King, and we'll start with Timon and Pumbaa. So obviously, primarily, they add a lot of comedy to the story, which would otherwise be a really serious story about a dad dying and an uncle trying to kill the nephew, which is kind of, dark and very serious. So we have these side characters kind of bring that up a little bit and make it more watchable. So they also create conflict. So the first conflict they create is for Simba offering him a wrong way of living, which is their Hakuna Matata lifestyle, which is really tempting to him, but it makes him, get rid of all responsibility.
This is a good example of what we mean when we're talking about internal conflict. There isn't actual fighting going on. Like, Simba does not need to have any violence with Timon and Pumbaa, but Simba is now conflicted because when they introduce him to Hakuna Matata, living with no worries and just leaving the past behind, they introduce him to a way of life that just allows Simba to avoid anything responsible.
The other conflict they create is between Simba having to choose to stay with his new friends and hide in the jungle, and the lovely Hakuna Matata lifestyle that's easy and doesn't require any responsibility, or returning to the Pride Lands, which is going to be hard, and he's going to have to face something that he might not be able to overcome.
Yeah, it's really easy to get stuck in a mindset of like when we're talking about a story conflict, something like actually like physical conflict that happens in Outsiders a lot, that even does happen at the end of Lion King. But it's important to keep in mind when we're talking about a character's conflict, there are a lot of conflicts other than those physical ones. So let's talk about another important side character that really pushes Simba forward.
So we have Rafiki, who is the wise old character, and he has this great amount of knowledge about the history of their world. He's been there for generations, and he's been guiding things for that long. So he kind of has this grand linear view of the entire story, and he sees the whole story that way. And he forces Simba to realize that he's messed up, and that he needs to go back home and take responsibility and get rid of this Hakuna Matata nonsense and go stand up to Scar.
So notice how the side characters here, between Timon and Pumbaa back here and Rafiki up here, serve the purpose of creating a conflict in Simba. Rafiki says you have to go home and be responsible. You have to take responsibility and help your people back in the Pride Lands. Whereas Timon and Pumbaa say, don't worry about it. Your life is your life. Relax. So these side characters serve to be almost like an angel and a devil on Simba's shoulder because they both push him in different directions to a better and a worse version of himself.
So we also have the hyenas. Not all of our side characters are on the side of our hero. We can have side characters on the other side of things also. And in this movie, they kind of serve the purpose of making a bigger threat. So it's not just Scar, it's Scar and this giant army of hyenas, and that's what gives him the power and elevation that he has. But they're also funny. Otherwise, again, it'd be really dark and hard to watch these vicious hyenas who don't have any comedy. And they give Simba somebody to work against.
Yeah, so these expand on the threat of Scar, because if Scar was all alone, Scar was just Scar and had nobody supporting him, he would not be as interesting of an antagonist as much as if he has a large army of disposable baddies that the story can then use. And this is really useful to the people writing the story because now they have a lot of individual baddies, a lot of individual antagonists as a group, rather than just their one big guy. So think about what kind of smaller scale antagonists or smaller scale problems your hero might face throughout the story with your side characters. So all this in mind, we want to now bring it back to the Outsiders. So we're going to list 5 activities, the 5 that you see here: a trading card, an interview, a bookmark, a wanted poster, or a social media profile. You're going to choose one of these and use that activity to analyze a side character from the outsiders. So we're going to go through them one at a time right now, and once we have seen all the instructions, go ahead, pick one, and do that in your notebook.
We want to also cover that you can choose any of these to do for one of the greasers. You can choose one of the named Socs. Either side. It doesn't have to be a greaser, but it wouldn't be Ponyboy.
Yeah, Ponyboy is our main character, so you're not going to do this about Ponyboy. That's why we use him in the examples, because then the examples don't have any info you can use.
Yeah. All right, so the first one is a trading card. And what you're going to do is you're going to sketch out in your notebook what this trading card would look like. And on the first side, it's going to, have a picture of the character. You don't have to be a great artist. Just do your best. And then there should be the character's name. And then on the back of the card, you're going to put 5 personality traits. So on this one, they're both on the front side, but we want a 2-sided card. And make sure that these are not bland personality traits, but it's really something that you could back up, like I know this because of something that happened in the book.
All right, next up we have an interview. An interview is simply to interview one of the side characters in the book. Think of what questions you would ask the character if you could sit with them and write a story with them. How will the character answer your questions? Be sure you include at least 5 questions and 5 answers, and yes or no questions are not acceptable for this. You want to ask interesting, open-ended questions that would give, like if you're interviewing Soda Pop, an answer to say, an opportunity to answer something more interesting than yes or no.
So then we have a bookmark, and you're going to create this bookmark. Just sketch it out in your journal what it would look like, and it'll be about a side character in the book. You're going to include visuals, quotes, dialogue, and inferences about the character. This is just a picture of a bookmark, but yours will not be this simple. You need to include a visual like this one does, and this one has some dialogue. He's saying things. But I want you to include an inference about the character and something that's actually quotable from the book so that we know that you're really going back into the text to do this analysis.
Next up is a wanted poster. This wanted poster is for a side character from the outsiders. And you're going to tell me why they're wanted. You're going to give us a description of their physical traits and their persona. So basically you would create a poster explaining why somebody might be wanted. There are several people who might be wanted for varying reasons in the book so far. So you could pick one of them and give a rundown of why.
But don't choose Ponyboy. And then we have a social media profile. So it could be modeled after Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of the one that you want to use. And it has to include some quotes from the text and a profile picture that matches the character. And you could add other things like who follows this character and what would their feed look like. Just have fun with it, but make sure that it really matches the criteria.
Yeah, this wouldn't match up with necessarily the time and setting of the outsiders, obviously. This was way before computers, much less phones, much less social media being an essential part of life. But if you could pretend that these characters all had social media profiles, that's something that you could use here to express what you understand and see about a side character. Alright, so all that said, go ahead and review those instructions. If you need any clarification on any of them, pick one of these 5 activities and work on it in your notebook. Get to work, Sailor!